Hey everyone, it's TK Friday again. Today it's going to be another TK8 full edit. This image is the Blue Mountains in Australia, photo by Keith Pinn. Thank you, Keith. We're going to work on this today, and you can download this image and follow along with me. It's a raw file. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. Thank you for joining me today. Hey, it's TK Friday again. I love TK Fridays, and I hope you do too. And just as a reminder, there's a great sale going on at the TK8 store right now. You can click on my affiliate link in the description below this video. It'll take you there. Use my promo code DK15 because it'll get you 20% off of everything that Tony Kuiper has to offer at his web store. Now that includes the TK8 plugin for Photoshop as well as training videos. Sean Bagshaw has a new video course on there. It's really great. I highly recommend it. But remember, my promo code DK15 gets you 20% off. Even though it says DK15, it's still 20% off. It'll remain that way till the end of this month. So back on March 1st, it'll be back to 15% off, which is still a great savings. And then the other thing I want to say is Tony Kuiper's TK8 plugin for Photoshop is really reasonably priced. If you don't yet have the TK8 plugin for Photoshop, now's a good time to get it while it is on sale. And don't forget, you can download this image from my Google Drive. I'll give you a link in the description below, and you can also download the linear profile. All right, first thing I want to do is crop this image. I think this space at the top could come down a little bit. My tip for you here is if you're using Lightroom, turn your lights out by tapping your L key twice. And before I do that, actually, I don't want the original crop. I want to do a freeform crop. I'll just do a custom crop and open up this little lock so it'll be free for me. So let me tap my L key twice, and all I want to do is just pull down a little bit and just get rid of that top right there. I just think, for me, it looks a little better. Hey, you don't have to crop it. You can leave it however you like it. And then I'm going to turn my lights back on and just click done here, and it will accept that crop. And now with your linear profile, and you get that linear profile after you've installed it, you just click right here and you're going to find it in your list of profiles, linear profile. And then you can close this, and there it is. And the next thing I do is click auto. That gets you a very good start. I think the white balance looks pretty good. I'm just going to warm it up a little bit. I think I'll take it up to like 7,000. I like the tint. I'm going to pull back on the exposure a little bit. I think mine are like a plus 45. That's almost a half a stop. And as far as contrast, I'm going to give it a little more contrast, like 28. Highlights are minus 60 right now. I'm just going to take them down a little more. Make sure I'm not blowing out any highlights. Minus 81. And I think I'll open up my shadows a little bit to like maybe a plus 69. And whites, I'm just going to pull those a little bit to the right, like a plus 16. I'm not touching the edge there. I'm going to give myself a little bit of room there. And then as far as the black point, I'm going to move it to the right. It's clipping slightly, so I'll just move it slightly to the right to like a minus 44. Maybe just a little bit more, right to where it's not clipping right there, minus 23. And then as far as texture, I'm going to give it a little texture. I usually don't, but in this image, I think it can take just a little, like a plus 3. And I'm going to give it a little bit of clarity as well, like a plus 10. No dehazing, and vibrance is 20 and 6. And then for detail, this is an ISO 200 image, so I'm not going to mess around with luminance, noise reduction, but I'm going to take the default setting of mine of 40 on the sharpening. And as far as lens corrections, I'm going to use remove chromatic aberrations and enable profile corrections. Okay? And that's all I'm going to do here in Lightroom. Now we're going to send it to Photoshop. To send it to Photoshop, I'll right click and go to Edit In and choose Photoshop 2022, and we'll get started. And here we are in Photoshop. The first thing I'm going to do is on the TK8 multi-mask panel, go to Luminosity Mask. I'm going to use Luminosity Mask Lights 1. I'm going to output that to a color grading tool. So I'm only targeting lights, right? And if you click on this double arrow here, you can see what your mask looks like. See, the darker areas will get or will be adjusted less. The light areas will be adjusted more. So it's targeting lights 1, okay? And then double click, or not double click, but just click these 2 arrows there again, and you're back to your image. Now, all I want to do is, I'm just going to work with the midtones here. So I'm going to click this midtone block, and I'm just going to lighten up the lights 1 a little bit. So I'm just going to take this slider and drag it to the right, and you see I'm just lightening up those lights a little wee bit there. Okay, so here's the before and here's the after. What I'm trying to do here is build up a little bit of contrast. Next, I'm going to X out of here. I'm going to come back here to the luminosity masks, and this time I'm going to use a darks one, and I just want to darken up the darks a little bit. Output it to a color grading tool, and then simply click on the middle midtone block again, and I just want to darken up those darks 1, like this. But you see that beautiful contrast coming in there? Isn't that, it always excites me when I see that contrast. Here's the before and here's the after. Now I'm going to do one thing a little different this week, and that is I'm going to X out of here, and I'm going to go to the midtones and add a little bit of contrast to midtones. I'm going to come back to the luminosity icon here and click on midtones 1. This time I'll output it to a curves adjustment. So let's click right here, and I'm going to use a preset here. So if you open up this preset here, this drop-down menu, I'm going to go to increase contrast RGB, just like that. Isn't that cool? Now that just increases contrast on the midtones. And if you want to see what that midtones looks like, that mask, again, click this double arrow here. That's what we're targeting right there. You can get some really beautiful results when you just add some contrast to midtones. So let's take a look. Here's the overall before, and here's the overall after. So I worked with lights 1, darks 1, and midtones 1, just to build up a little bit of contrast. Now we can put these all in a group. Curves 1 is selected here. If I hold the shift key down and click on the first color grading layer, and then come here to the white side of this group icon here on the CX panel, and let's just call this contrast. And this is nice if you put it in a group, because what you can do is take the opacity. If you feel you have too much contrast, you can take this opacity and start to pull it back, okay? I like the contrast, so I'm going to leave it right where it is. But then you can also shut that contrast group off and see the before and after as well. So a nice little tip there, and it's also going to save a little area here as we start to add new layers here. But you can always open it back up by clicking this triangle here, okay? I'm going to close that for now. Next, I want to work on the clouds. Isn't this a really cool image? Thank you, Keith Pinn, for this image. And by the way, if anybody out there has other images, you can submit them to me. The only thing I ask is if you let me share them with everybody so that we can all learn together, which is a really great way of learning and working with the TK8 multi-mask plugin for Photoshop. And I have a bunch of images already submitted to me. Thank you, everyone out there who has submitted images to me. We're going to get to those, but I'm just taking one at a time. Here's how we'll tackle those clouds. Let's grab a color grading tool, click the plus to apply it to a layer. Let's click on the midtones. Now I'm only looking at the darker parts of the clouds first, okay? What I want to do is just start to darken those up a little bit. Don't worry about the rest of the image. I don't want them too dark, but maybe somewhere right around in there. And then we're going to shut off this layer, X out of the color grading tool. Let's grab a zone mask and let's target some of the darker tones in the cloud, like right here. Click OK, and let's narrow down that selection. Okay, just like so. Yeah, like this, maybe somewhere around in here. So it's the lighter areas are the darker areas. We're going to output that to a black mask, painting through a selection with a white brush. By the way, if you don't have like a Wacom tablet or some type of a pen, I highly recommend that you get it, because that's what I use for all of my adjustments, okay? Very helpful, especially when you're dodging and burning. But we have this black mask. You can see I have a selection by the selection indicator. I'm going to take my opacity to about 20%. We'll try that out. And I'm just going to be painting over this area here. And when I paint, the darker areas will get darker. Now, the panel automatically sets me up with a white brush, and I'm just going to build it up slowly. Every time I lift my brush, I'm applying more paint. And I think right there looks pretty good. Let's take a look. Here is the before, and here's the after. But it just adds that little bit of contrast up there, and I really like it. Now, if you overpaint like I overpainted into the hill a little bit here, just deselect your selection and with the opposite color paint, and you can grab your paint right here, black. And then with my nice soft edge brush at 20% opacity still, I'm going to paint across this mountain and just blend this better and remove it from the top of the mountain. And let's take a look. Here is the before and here's the after. But I just want to darken those clouds up a little bit. It just shows some nice drama happening up in there, and I think that looks really nice. And I always want to point out, you have this double arrow here. Click it. Make sure you're on the layer of the mask you just painted, and you can see what your mask looks like by clicking that. Clicking it again goes back to your image. Now that I'm done with the clouds, I'm just studying my image, and I'm thinking, what next needs done, Dave? And what I think is, I love the misty look all around here. This mist up in here, up here in the clouds, and the mist back here. There's a lot of mist on these mountains back here, but you know what? I think I want a little bit more contrast, but I don't want to lose the misty look. So let me show you how we do that. I'm going to grab one of my favorite Photoshop tools, and that's the object selection tool in the lasso mode. And I'm just going to draw a selection around this part of the mountains. And if the selection tool misses a part, as you'll see, it will miss this part down in the bottom right. See how it missed that part? I'm going to go ahead and hold the shift key down and try to grab it. Hold the shift key again, and now I got it. And now that I've got that selection, and it's not a perfect selection, but I'm going to come into this edit icon, edit selection icon, and click it. And I'm just going to add a little bit of blur. Click this icon. It looks like a water drop. That's the Gaussian blur dialog. I'm going to add about 20 pixels of blur just to help everything blend better. Click OK. And then click this icon right here. That adds that blur to the selection. Okay. And then what I want to do is just output this to a color grading tool by clicking on this color grading tool right here and clicking the plus, and you can see my selection is right there. Now, if we click the double arrows, you can see there's my blurred edges on there and everything, and click again and we can see my selection again. Now all we need to do is make the adjustment. I'm going to use all three of these blocks here. First off, remember I'm trying to add contrast. I'm going to click the black block, which is the shadows, and drag this to the left. Now, I may overdo it a little bit here, and something like that. And now I'm going to go to the highlights and lighten up the highlights a little bit, just to add some of that contrast there. And then I'm going to come to the midtones and just slightly move it to the left a little bit, adding a little bit more contrast. Now, the cool thing here is I have this opacity slider, so I can take it the whole way off. And just look on these mountains back here. I don't know if I like this area here, but I'll show you how I can fix that. I'm going to take this opacity and just start to drag it to the right. And I just want a little bit of contrast in there. Maybe, I don't know, maybe like 55, 48. Let's take a look. Here is the before and here is the after. Again, the before and the after. And I think that's good. You can always come back and readjust. It doesn't look too bad right here, but what I'm going to do is on this layer mask here, grab a black brush, and I have 20% and a nice big soft brush, and I'm just going to paint over this a couple times with that black brush, maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 5. Okay, and we could take a look at that mask by doing this, and that's my paint that I'm painting over there, okay? So I'm just blending that in is all I'm doing here. Okay, so let's click this again and see if that looks natural. I may hit it a couple more times here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I think that looks good. Let's take a look. Here is the before and here is the after. Isn't that nice? It just adds that little extra contrast back there, and I think it really helps. But we have nice layers in this image. In other words, we have this foreground area here, then we have these mountains back here, and this other set of mountains back in this area here. It's really beautiful, and then we have the sky up here. Before I move on, I think I want to darken these clouds a little more, so let's go to that cloud layer. It's right here. Now, it's not a bad idea to name your layers. I didn't, but it's a good idea. But that's the clouds, so let me go ahead and click on this mid-tone block so we can see where the clouds are at. Now that resets everything. Click it again, and you can see that's my mid-tone adjustment. Now watch these clouds. I'm going to take this and drag it more to the left. See how they're getting darker? Yeah, I think I want more. Let's try the shadows as well and see what happens if I move this over. Not much is happening there because I don't have a lot of real dark shadows, so I'm going to right-click this and reset it. But let's look at my midtones. Okay, so here's my before And here's my after. I just think that adds a little more drama up there, and I like it. The next thing I want to do is add some depth and dimension to this foreground area here. And to do that, it's going to be dodging and burning. I'm going to start out with dodging. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's go to this top layer, click it, and make it active. Let's X out of the color grading tool. Let's grab a zone mask. So click this icon right here, and I just want to find a light area of a tree, super light area, so maybe something like right in here. I'm going to click OK, and there's my zone mask. Now what I want to do is I really want to like tighten it up, so I'm going to take this slider and drag it into the left. And I'm just looking for those really light highlights, and I'm going to lighten them up a little bit by dragging this slider to the right a little bit. Maybe right around there. And all these light areas are all my really light highlights. And I'm going to mainly just be working on the trees. I'll do the rocks back here later. But let's go ahead and now put this to a dodge tool. I'm going to choose the left side of this dodge tool, which gives me a 50% gray layer. Now I'm painting through a selection. You can see my selection indicator, and I'm just going to start dodging. Now I'm going to do something a little different here today. I'm going to dodge with color. So if you click this icon right here, this green brush, a color picker comes up, and let's start up in this area here. So let's choose this color right here. But this is very important. I'm dodging, right? So 50% is right around here. I have to dodge with a lighter value higher than 50% or nothing will happen, okay? And I want to add more color. So I'm going to come up into this area right up in here. And I may want to make that slightly a little more yellow-green, so I can drag this slider and pull it up into a little more yellow-green. You see that like that? And click OK. And now with a nice small brush, now remember I'm using a Wacom pen and tablet here. And I'm going to try 20% and just paint. You see that? Now, I'm not going to paint every light area, but I'm just going to pick out areas that I want. And this is where, just like in my last week's edit, I told you this is where you become an artist. You pull out your paint brushes, and with a Wacom tablet, you will feel like an artist with a Wacom tablet and pen. But you see how I can just beautifully hit these highlighted areas. And don't forget my luminosity mask, or my zone mask, I should say, is giving me training wheels. So I can have a little bigger brush here and be a little bit liberal because, you know, that selection's helping me. But I only want to hit light areas. And again, I don't have to hit look at that. You know, I feel like Bob Ross. And now you can vary your colors as well. So you could come like here, and let's grab this brush icon here again, and it opens up your color picker. Let's pick right here now, and let's come up into here. And again, let's go up into more greener type tones this time, maybe a little greener, and let's paint. Oh yeah, look at that. So you can vary these colors around, and it adds interest and beauty, but did you think you could dodge it with color? Well, I'm here to let you know you can. Now, I'm painting with 20%, so every time I lift my brush and paint again, I'm adding another splash of that paint on there, okay? So it's really kind of nice. But this is where you have fun. I went ahead and sped the video up, and I'm just painting around, and I'll be sampling different colors, and then I'll be moving those colors around different parts of the image as well, just to marry everything together. But isn't this beautiful what you can do with a little bit of painting? And again, this is where you make this image your own piece of art, where you decide what colors do I want, what highlights do I want to bring out. You know, you can change this world into the world that you want it to be. Let's go ahead and take a look at the before and after. Here is the before, and here is the after. I'm going to stop at that point, but take as much time as you need to bring out all the beauty of this image. And remember, you have this opacity. If you're too strong, you can take this opacity and you can pull it back and just dial in as much as you want. But for now, I'm going to leave it at 100%. Now, you do have an artistic license. You can do whatever you want. I was talking to Tony Kuiper the other day, and we were talking and saying, I said, Tony, what do you think Ansel Adams would have thought of Photoshop? And Tony and I both agreed that he would love Photoshop because he loved to do creative work on his photographs. And I think Ansel would have loved the TK8 plugin for Photoshop too. And by the way, if you hold down your Option or Alt key and then click on this eye of this dodge layer, you can see where I've painted. So it's kind of nice, right? Option click again, and you're back to the image. The next thing I'm seeing is this mist up here. Now, I want to use my artistic license to add a little bit of highlights wherever I think it will look good. So right now I have a selection. So let's click this icon on the TK8 panel or combo panel. And that gets rid of our selection. And now let's grab a dodge tool. I'm going to click the left side of this dodge tool. It's going to give me a gray layer with an overlay blend mode and white paint. And I'm still at 20%. I'm going to do a freehand dodge here. And whoops, that's too much. I'm going to hit this back button here just to take it back. I'm going to bring that down to 10%. That was too much. And I'm just going to paint a little bit of mist in here. You see that? Just wherever I think it should be. Again, I'm doing what I want here. And I'm just adding a little bit of highlights in here, just where I think I want it. Maybe in here even. And then remember, I have the opacity here. I can take it off and just dial in as much of that as I want just to make it look realistic. Here's the before and here's the after. But I like it. But we're not just out there taking pictures. We're making creative images, pieces of art. I went ahead and renamed all my layers just to help us out here. Now, on these rocky areas back in here, I want to do some dodging, but I'm going to use my artistic license again and use some freehand dodging. So what we're going to do is grab another dodge layer, and I'm going to pause right now and then just start dodging with white paint at a low opacity of probably 10%. I may change it to 20%, but I'll speed up the video so we can shorten this up a little bit here. Okay, so the video is sped up here, but you know what? I decided to go with 20% opacity. So again, I'm just looking for light areas on the rocks, not all the areas, using my artistic license just to bring out some depth and dimension. And I will be doing burning also, in case you're wondering. But right now, it's just bringing out some of the highlights here. But this is really, again, where you can be really creative, and this will set your image apart from other images. Now let's take a look at the before and after. Let me shut this layer off. Here's the before and here's the after. But isn't that nice? You see how we can really bring out the highlights? Now, if you hold your Option or Alt key down and click on this eye, you can see where I painted with my freehand painting. We've dodged, and now it is time to burn. Okay, so let's come to our zone mask. Now, what I want to do is, the color picker comes up. I want to go with some darker tones in here, like maybe right here. Let's click OK. I'm going to work in the foreground. So let's just narrow that adjustment by dragging this in like so. I'm going to get a really nice tight selection. Let's lighten this up just a little wee bit. And I think that's going to be pretty good. And this is the zone where we're at right here. And I think that's going to be good. Let's output it to a burn tool on a gray layer. It'll be in the soft light blend mode. Now we're set up with black paint. I'm at 20%. Now all I want to do is find some darker areas and start building some depth here. You'll notice when I start to paint on these areas here, I might even go up to 30%, okay? And as you can see, when I can paint, it pushes those dark areas back in there, and we can just find areas that we want. I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video, and through the magic of video editing, I'm just going to talk to you, but I'm just using my artistic license again. Now remember, I'm painting through a selection, and I'm just darkening up areas. And when I darken those areas up, it tends to push those darker areas back, adding depth and dimension. And I can't say enough about dodging and burning. I think every image you ever do should be dodged and burned. And the TK8 plugin for Photoshop will really help you get beautiful results and speed up your workflow. Now let's check out the before and after. Here is the before, and here is after. But isn't that cool? Look at the depth and dimension we have now. Now remember, you have the opacity slider. If you were too strong, not a problem. Just ease back on your adjustment. Like say if I went back to 75%, that looks pretty darn good and realistic. So I may just pull that back a little bit. The next thing I want to do is do some freehand burning on these rocks. And to do that, I'm going to deselect my selection by clicking right here on the CX panel. And let's just grab a burn tool. I'm going to use another gray layer soft light with a black brush. I'm just going to start burning, and I'm going to be probably at about 20 to 30%. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video now and then speed it up, and I'll talk you through it. I ended up deciding on 20% opacity for my brush, and so again, I'm just looking for darker areas. Not every dark area, but just the areas that I think will help. And for me, I really love when I get to this part of the edit where I get to burn, I get to dodge, I get to sculpt my image and really turn it into something special, something that is set apart from the crowd. And by that, I mean people who don't dodge and burn their images. They'll look at your images and say, why does my image not look like that? But it's up to you if you want to let them in on your little secret about dodging, burning or not. Now let's take a look. Here is the before. And here is the after. Isn't that cool? And if it's too strong, again, take your opacity and you can ease it back a little bit. And I think I'm going to ease it back to about maybe 75%. Here is the before and here is the after. Isn't that cool? I went ahead and renamed this layer Burn Black Paint Rocks. Let's put these all in a group, all the dodge and burn layers. So this top layer selected, hold your shift key down and click on the bottom dodge layer. And then come to this group icon, put it in a white group, click on the right side of the group icon, and that's in a group, and let's call this dodge and burn. And now we can take a look here. Here is without dodging and burning, and here it is with. Pretty impressive, wouldn't you say? And remember, you have the overall opacity if you want to pull back on the whole dodge and burn layers all at one time because they're in a group. The final thing I want to do is add a vignette. So let's come to our TK actions and grab the basic vignette. Give it a second here. And I'm just going to use the default radius. Click OK. I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm going to leave this at 50%. Here is the before and here's the after. I don't like how it's making my darks on the edges super dark. So I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to use something called Blend If. I'm going to double click on this layer and come down here where it says underlying layer. What I want you to do is start to drag this to the right. It's going to protect. Can you see how it's protecting the dark tones? Hold your Option or Alt key down and split this. Click on the right hand side of this and divide this. This will cause it to feather. You see how it feathers across there, giving us a nice transition. And I think maybe something right around there and there gives us a nice blend if. Click OK. So now take a look. Here is the before and here is the after. So we have a nice subtle vignette, but we're protecting some of the darker edges there with a blend if. So that's a new little tip that I'm showing you today. Take note of that blend if tip for working with vignettes. I think you'll really be happy with the results you'll get when you're doing vignetting, just to protect the shadow areas. Let's take a look at the overall before and after. I'm going to use my before after action I made. I'm going to click this. Here's my before. So just study it for a second, and here is the after. What an amazing dramatic result. I'm really happy with this one. I hope you give this a try. Well, there you go, everyone. And thank you, Keith Pinn, for this beautiful image. And I hope all you guys and gals out there will download this image and try it out. And don't forget, you can also quickly download that linear profile as well from my Google Drive. If you enjoyed the tutorial today, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe, click that bell notification icon. Then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll be notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. I'll see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.